Congressman, let's not forget your constituents also care about the China problem. And President Trump dealt with that head on. A lot of jobs were decimated in Michigan as well as a result of all of these globalists sending their productions overseas to China. And we really felt that hard when we needed the prescription drugs that we needed that were all manufactured in China during the beginning of this pandemic. So you got to give President Trump a lot of credit for the way he dealt with China. And that certainly impacted many of your constituents, Congresswoman.
I'm going to say this. I loved Bob Lighthizer. I thought he was one of the best U.S. trade representatives that I've known in my career. I believe that I opposed the TPS, as you know. It took the first thing I did when I got elected as a member of Congress. And we had to look at a lot of other stuff. The administration knows how I feel about this. I think we've got to look at provisions that, when we have a government bid or a government contract, we say costs. I want to start with national security. I think, and I am looking at doing legislation on this, where national security should be the number one issue when we are placing. And I think that's really important. And you want to go to something really stupid, we're having quality issues. So I had to have surgery last week. You couldn't tell it. But an implant that was put in my mouth, made in China, infected my entire jaw. And I'm now told that this is starting to happen in many places. We got to look at this stuff. It's, these are issues that have to be looked at.
Wow. Well, Congresswoman, you make a really important point. Thanks very much for weighing in. And I'm sorry to hear about that surgery. We send you our best regards, as always. Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, thanks so much for weighing in. Okay, good. Thank God for that. We are living an incredible, momentous day. We are living history. We are watching one president exit and watching another president begin. President Trump is exiting the White House, as you see, to depart the White House on his final day after his presidential term. He will be getting in that chopper, going to Florida, and in just a few hours, a new day begins with the country welcoming the 46th president of the United States, Joe Biden, to be sworn in and inaugurated at 12 noon this afternoon. President Trump and Melania Trump, First Lady, with the president, probably going to make a few remarks. Let's listen in. No sound. He's just speaking to the reporters right there at the White House, shooting him. We heard his video that he sent out last night, calling this the greatest honor of his life, to be the commander-in-chief for 4 years. The First Lady, Melania Trump, and the President, Donald Trump, giving their final goodbyes to the media after he exits the White House for the last time as the 45th commander-in-chief. The president will get on that helicopter and go to Florida. He is expected to go to Mar-a-Lago. And a new day and a new chapter begins in America as we all hope and pray for peace and prosperity for the greatest country in the world. Joining me right now is former senior advisor to the Clintons, MDC Partners CEO, and the Stagwell Group president and managing partner, Mark Penn. Mark, thanks for weighing in here. We're going to get to Dagan McDowell in a moment. But first, your reaction to this momentous day.
Well, a new president taking office is always a day of hope in America. I think Americans are fundamentally optimistic. They're going to give a new president of any party a chance to govern, and I think they want to see what Joe Biden is all about. And I think it's unfortunate that the president is, not going to be there. And in many ways, it's an end of the unexpected presidency. I think that he tried to change a lot of things in the country, but I think the last month here is a true stain on his record, a true, as you said, resulted in some really horrific or heinous acts here. It really is something we'll see whether it gets adjudicated or not. I hope there will be no impeachment trial because it will just serve to divide America. I think all Americans are united that what happened was wrong, and all Americans are united that they're hopeful about Joe Biden, and they're going to take an attitude of seeing what he's really all about, and will he govern for all Americans as he says he will.
How can you not be hopeful? We all want the best for this country. You have to have hope. and confidence that America goes on in its strong position. Dagan McDowell, jump in.
What all Americans can do right now, and what I certainly find disturbing, having worked in the media as a journalist my entire professional career, are the calls and actions taken by the very large technology companies, calls and actions by people who used to work in tech and by other journalists for censorship. The shutting down of the President of the United States social media accounts, the censoring of a story that was unflattering to the Biden campaign about his son Hunter. That really started it. But again, the coordinated action by three large technology monopolies, Amazon, Google, and Apple, to put out of business a competitor for no other reason than that they were concerned about the people organizing the riots, something that was also happening on Facebook. Calls for essentially removing Fox from cable networks. And all the response from journalists is like, yes, because CNN wants to be a monopoly. But again, the calls for censorship and the language being used, the deprogramming of conservatives, the deprogramming of Republicans, I think everybody needs to unite and stand up against that, because again, it is patently un-American, anti-American.
And you would expect that in time everybody would see that, Dagan. It's absolutely outrageous. You're right. You know, today we are having hope in our hearts and hope for fairness to return, for strength and leadership to continue for America as we turn the page on a new president. But it's really an unfortunate situation that everybody doesn't see it the way you just discussed, because censorship has no place in the freedoms that we enjoy here in America. The president has now taken off. He is in that chopper on his way to Florida, getting out of Washington as a new day begins with President-elect Joe Biden getting inaugurated today in just a few hours, 12 p.m. noon, which of course we will cover this incredibly historic transfer of power. President Trump, meanwhile, issued a number of pardons ahead of his final day in office. Some of the names receiving a pardon are former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon, rappers Lil Wayne and Kodak Black, and former RNC deputy finance chair Elliot Brody. Mark Penn is with us this morning, along with Dagan McDowell and John Hilsenrath. Mark, it is a new day. What are you expecting from Joe Biden?
Well, I'm expecting, that elections will have consequences, that these executive orders represent a fundamental shift.
Sorry.
As I went through them, they're primarily about climate change, racial equity, immigration. I think those are policy areas where you're going to see change. The public really said, if you go back to the exit polls, I'm electing Joe Biden because of the virus. I think Donald Trump did a good job on the economy, the public said, but not the virus. So they're really looking for the kind of program that will end the virus. I think with the vaccine coming out, 70% support the mask, guidance from the president. I don't think that's really a question. I think the public really wants to see strong action on the virus. They want to see a stimulus program to help people in the economy and a real focus on those issues, not on politically divisive issues. And that's really the needle that President Biden is going to have to thread if he's going to get the support of over 50% of the country.
Yeah, which is why I'm wondering if it is necessary, Mark, for the president-elect to come out with some kind of a statement about the censorship that we're seeing, to think that, these media companies, these social media companies have the power to just wipe out businesses, wipe out, opinions that they don't agree with, is absolutely outrageous. And there's that part of it. And then there's also these groups at Harvard and elsewhere that want to revoke your degrees if you worked in the administration. That's what they're trying to do right now to Kayleigh McEnany. Of course, they're doing it to Trump supporters as well. should Joe Biden come out in the name of unity and say, look, this needs to stop? And by the way, the president right now is flying to Joint Base Andrews. We are expecting from there he goes to Florida. But just to be clear, the chopper ride is going to Joint Base Andrews. But your thoughts, Mark, on that in terms of whether or not we will hear something from Joe Biden, given all of the conversation he's had and the talking points that he's been on in terms of bringing unity to this country?
I do think that if Joe Biden stood kind of very solidly behind free speech, behind looking at what actions tech companies should or should not do, it would go a long way towards trying to heal things here, because it's one thing to go after violent actions. Everybody agrees with that. It's another thing to go after speech. And I think that if President Biden is able to kind of draw that distinction, that would reach out to a lot of voters who feel that they're being increasingly alienated. And the cancel culture is obviously incredibly divisive. And I think if Biden were to, express that that's not the way he wants to proceed, that he wants to bring the country together, I think he can change the country through legislation and executive orders. He can have a new set of priorities and calm the